friend, Tracy Gray, a businesswoman, an entrepreneur. She used to have beautiful wine stores. And, I've always said, as Churchill would say, alcohol has taken much out of me, but not as much as I've taken out of it. Thank you very much, Tracy, for working on this campaign, for serving the great people of the Okanagan and being for a strong voice for British Columbia. Wow. What a crowd. Look at this crowd. You are among the 311,959 new members of the Conservative Party who have signed up to take back control of your lives. I think the reason we have such an incredible movement is, by the way, all the political experts said that there are no conservatives on Vancouver Island, right? He said this is the left coast. Maybe we can have a rally for the Green Party here, but never for a conservative. But look at the crowds that we're bringing together, the excitement that we're generating, the youth that fill our rooms. This movement is growing across the country. It is not a campaign, it is a cause. And the cause is to make Canada the freest country on earth. Freedom is like oxygen. You don't notice it unless it's gone, right? For so long we took it for granted, but after years of big, bossy government taking your money and telling you what to do, taking away the basic freedoms that you come to expect here in this wonderful land of ours, you realize that if you don't take an interest in politics, politics will take an interest in you. In other words, as they say in Ottawa, if you're not at the table, you're on the menu, right? So you've all made the decision to be at the table, but you don't count unless you vote. Have you all sent your votes in? I've heard countless stories on this campaign. We saw people lose the control of their medical decisions with these terrible and unscientific COVID vaccine mandates. And that is why a Conservative government led by Pierre Poilievre will put a permanent end to the COVID vaccine mandates. Suffering from 40-year highs in inflation, including housing inflation. It has nearly doubled house prices since Justin Trudeau took office. People can't afford food, fuel, or shelter anymore. Why? Well, the answer is that the cost of government is driving up the cost of living. $500 billion of new government spending means more dollars chasing fewer goods, which always equals higher prices. It's nothing new. For thousands of years, emperors, kings, presidents, prime ministers who've run out of money and printed more have led to more inflation. If you have 10 loaves of bread at $10, it's $1 for each loaf. If you double the number of dollars to 20, but you still only have 10 loaves of bread, all of a sudden it's $2 for each loaf. It's pretty simple math. And when you tax that bread production by taxing your farmers and your truckers and your manufacturers, well, you add more to the price. The more government spends, the more things cost. It's just inflation, isn't it? Just inflation. So what are we going to do about it? Well, we're going to reverse the very policies that caused the problem in the first place, starting with getting government spending under control. This is how we're going to do it. Let's walk through some of the plans here. They put together a $35 billion infrastructure bank. Well, we need infrastructure, but we don't need another bank. The only thing this bank has done is pay bonuses to executives and give loan guarantees to powerful corporations, even though those corporations and that bank have not completed a single project in 5 years. I'm going to get rid of the federal infrastructure bank and save that money for taxpayers. We'll save $1 billion by defunding the CBC. Larry Martin is not going to be sending me a Christmas card this year. You know what else we're going to do? We're going to manage your money in government the way you manage it in your household. You know, when you add $1 of spending in one place, you find $1 of savings somewhere else to pay for it. That's because the oldest law of economics is scarcity. And the oldest law of politics is to ignore the oldest law of economics, right? Politicians are the only creatures in the universe who do not have to live with scarcity. Why? Because they just pass it on to someone else. The birds and the trees, the fish in the seas, they all have to make maximum use of limited resources, but the politician can just pass it on in inflation, debt, and taxes for the people. So we need to internalize that scarcity and force the same decisions on politicians that you have to make in your life with something called the Pay-As-You-Go Act. Here's how it works. Yeah, very simple principle. You bring in $1 of spending, you have to find $1 of savings. The Americans had this law in the 1990s. They allowed them to balance the budget and pay off $400 billion of debt in just a few years. But as soon as that law lapsed, they went right back into deficit, proving once again that politicians need legal limits on their spending. You've been pinching your pennies long enough. It's time for government to pinch its pennies too. Instead of creating more cash, we need to create more of what cash buys. The principle is simple. Instead of doubling the number of dollars from 10 to 20, imagine if you doubled the number of loaves of bread from 10 to 20. You get $10 and 20 loaves of bread. All of a sudden it's 50 cents. The purchasing power of the dollar goes further. So how are we going to unleash that production? We've got to get the government gatekeepers out of the way. They stand in the way of new housing, of food production, and of the production of our own Canadian natural resources. So, no housing. You know, we have the fewest houses per capita of any country in the G7. Why? We have the most land to build on. Well, the answer is local government gatekeepers block builders from building. The cost of getting permits approved and the other associated taxes and development charges equals $650,000 for each unit of housing in the city of Vancouver. Of course, all of that gets passed on to the end consumer. And when Vancouver has more expensive housing, well, people have to move out further. And the prices radiate further and further out into the neighboring jurisdictions. And you're seeing it here. House prices have doubled here in 7 years. We have 35-year-olds living in their parents' basements. You know, I was asking in Vancouver, how is it possible to bring home a date when you live in your mom's basement? And one mother in the audience said, very carefully. But seriously, how can you build up credit history, collateral, get married, have kids, if you can't own your own home? It is unacceptable in a country with this much land, labor, and lumber that we don't have more houses. So here's the plan. A Poilievre government will link the number of dollars big cities get for infrastructure to the number of houses they allow to be completed, to incentivize them to get their gatekeepers out of the way and let builders build. Secondly, I will require, yes, we will require that every federally funded transit station be pre-approved for high-density apartments,